This video is inspired by the Mitten Squad and Rocket Sloth. Halo 2 is one of the better Halo games in the Halo franchise. It also leaves us all at a cliffhanger until Halo 3 came out back in 2007. However, this video is not about the history of Halo or anything like that. But instead, today we have the question that everyone has been asking in the entire universe. Can you beat Halo 2 with only the starting weapons and melee? Now, the rules and conditions of this playthrough is I can only use weapons that I start with, including grenades. I cannot swap out any weapons at any point of the game. If I do, then I am not allowed to use them. Also, what makes this a little bit challenging is the fact that some of the weapons I start out with cannot be reloaded, and you cannot pick up ammo without swapping weapons. So therefore, some of the Covenant weapons will be a challenge to use, and I must use them sparingly. Grenades, if I start out with 4, I can use 4 of the grenades that I start out with. I cannot use any other grenades I pick up, and if I start out with human grenades and wind up with Covenant grenades, I am not allowed to use Covenant grenades. That is pretty much the conditions of this challenge. The only positive side of this challenge is I can at least pick up ammunition for my human weapons because I'm not trading out weapons. So, there's a loophole. And also I can only use my fist. And I am not allowed to switch out energy swords. Before I began this challenge, I decided to go through the options to see if I could change out that disgusting background for it's called the main menu. Oh, it's so bad. I hate it. After realizing that I could not change the background of the main menu, I decided to jump into the challenge of Halo 2 Anniversary. Because I'm such a boss at this game, of course, I played this game on Legendary. Not easy. I don't care what you see on the screen. It's Legendary. Just take my word for it. It's Legendary. Starting off, I watched a cutscene that was completely irrelevant to Halo 2's story completely. And after watching that, I jumped into a trial. And this trial was to see if the Arbiter was a traitor to the Covenant. And he was. He was a jerk, and he was going to be shamed for what what happened back in Halo 1. But then moving on, we jumped over to the armory where Master Chief and the dude with the awkward haircut was talking about how he's going to eat a burrito. But the thing that was in his hand looked more like a clip for a weapon. So I don't know why he was talking about burritos at that time. After the dude with the weird haircut is done talking about burritos, he takes me over to test out my shields. And I was like, sure. And then he spills the beans while I'm in there that it cooks burritos, actually. And that was going to be cooked alive. And so I started panicking, and it was so hard for me not to grab a gun out of thin air and shoot this guy because he was about ready to kill me right there. But luckily, Sergeant Johnson walked in, so I didn't have to pull out a gun without starting with it, and he saved me. We took this train ride, got some medals, and then the Covenant attacked. And then Sergeant Johnson was like, hey, we gotta go kill some guys. And I was like, okay, I need a weapon. So he's like, sure, I'll give you a weapon. So then the game starts, and then I realize I have no grenades, I have no weapons in my hand. That means I have to do this entire level with only melee. And then to add insult to injury, I was forced to grab weapons to even melee, so that was a nightmare. But on a serious note, playing through this mission was not really fun. The moment I started the mission, I then realized, oh wait, I got a problem. And the problem was going to be kind of like towards the end of the mission. I have to go out in space, and there are going to be these 3 jetpack elites or whatever, and you have to kill all 3 of them just to unlock a door to proceed to the final part of the mission. I got lucky in this area because 2 of the jetpack elites, they got stuck under something I'm not sure what, like, I'm not sure how to describe it. They got stuck under something, so when they're flying up, they're hitting their heads, and I was able to melee 2 of the 3 elites. And then I got extra lucky when the 3rd elite didn't even bother leaving the turret that he was stationed at. And then I just meleeed him, I'm not sure, once, twice, maybe 3 times, however many times it shows in the video, and he died. So I got lucky there. And then the last part of the mission, I just had to melee all the enemies. Melee them all, get some cover, melee some more, get some cover, melee some more, get some cover, yada yada yada. You get the story. That's pretty much how the first mission played out. So then after I meleeed all the enemies, I took a bomb, and the dude with the really weird haircut started saying I have the ultimate burrito in my hand. So then I took it out in space so I could freeze it. So after the completion of the first mission, taking the bomb out to space, blowing up a random ship, and then going down to Earth, we're flying around, minding our own business on Earth, and then we get assaulted by a giant scarab. We crash, and I wake up after being all blurry and everything, and I start walking around, starting to get some Halo Combat Evolved flashbacks there, and I start beating grunts, just beating them, and start shooting some things too eventually. The main challenge of this part of the mission was nothing really. It was just time. It was really boring. I stayed around this area for like this big courtyard area and just started beating things and occasionally shooting them. And then I decide, I'm not going to deal with the hunters, so I ran right past them. I think Sergeant Johnson killed one of them really quickly, but I just ran right past them. I ran right past most of the enemies that were camping on buildings. I made it all the way to this hotel, ran through the hotel, and then I get out to this big wide open area. After hanging around a little bit, shooting up some aliens, the Warthog finally got around, and I hopped in with my 2 gunners, and we drove off into the sunset, never to be seen again. Just kidding. We started driving through a lot of aliens. I didn't hit any. Actually, let me tell you this. I actually had to redo this mission because later I realized, oh snap, I hit a couple of enemies during this gameplay, and I'm not allowed to hit enemies with vehicles. I can only punch them or shoot them with my starting weapons or blow them up with the starting grenades. So yeah, had to redo this mission once, but probably the hardest part of this whole entire segment was just driving through the tunnels, trying not to hit anything while getting the mission over with as quick as possible. I should have been taking my time here. Metropolis. This was one of the missions I was kind of concerned about doing because the last part of the mission where you had to destroy the scarab. Well, anyways, I started off just taking the Warthog, driving through as quickly as possible. Why? Because I'm not allowed to shoot the tanks, machine gun, or the cannon. So I thought, I just hop in the Warthog and let all the Marines do the shooting. I actually had to redo this mission too, or I shouldn't say redo it, but had to restart the mission because I accidentally hit an enemy later down the road. So the footage you're seeing right now is of me going through it the second time. But I avoided all the enemies, try not to damage them at all. If they smash into me, that's their fault, but if I smash into them, that's not our problem. If we smash into each other, then I'd have to restart the mission too. But I started driving the Warthog as far as I could until the Marines jumped out, and then I just went on foot from there. And then I hopped into the other Warthog that had a Gauss, I think that's what it's called, a Gauss cannon on it. I like to call it the gaseous cannon because it's cooler, funner sounding. Drove that all the way until I had to dump it because I had to go through some tight corridors and everything. Then I jumped on the scarab and I started beating all the aliens senseless while shooting them on occasion. And eventually I killed everyone, and that was the end of Metropolis there. It was really simple, and yeah, I guess I thought for sure I was gonna die at least twice on that mission, but I guess not. Now, on to the first Covenant, or Arbiter mission, if you will. This mission I was a little bit concerned about going into because the last part of it, which I'll explain later. But the beginning part I knew was going to be easy. All I just got to do is shoot as little as I can, go invisible to get around enemies without them seeing me. So that was all good there. It was simple to get through big chunks of the mission without doing much fighting. When I got to the big hangar, like the big hangar where you had to land a phantom to drop off some of your teammates, I just went straight for that. Didn't bother attacking any of the enemies until after I opened up the door. I ended up having to hide because I almost died, and then just went invisible again. When enemy reinforcements came in, snuck past most of them, and went on to his room where I saw the heretic, and he was saying stuff like, "Oh, you gotta catch me, yada yada yada." I flew off. So then I jumped into a banshee, and then this is where I thought I was gonna have the most trouble, because what I thought originally was that I had to stay with the phantom and search in all the locations for the heretic, and because he's hiding right now. And then I realized, wait a minute, what if I know the location, or what if I just find the location by myself without the phantom's help? And sure enough, I found it, and then the game progressed and said, go kill the heretic now. And I was like, okay. So fought through all the enemies. I think I died once, I don't remember. And then that was the end of the heretic mission. Or not the heretic, but the Arbiter mission. Now it's time for the Oracle. The Oracle, I was imagining I was going to have a lot of problems with. I had probably the most amount of problems in this mission versus all the rest of the missions for the rest of this playthrough. But this one, I thought I was going to have a lot more problems, because you're on this elevator at the after the beginning fight sequence, and you gotta stay on this until it reaches the end of its destination. Can't die, and checkpoints are kind of hard to come by if you don't kill enemies quick enough, because the enemies will just constantly build up and up and up and everything. And I think I died maybe 2 times on this elevator, and that was probably the second hardest part of this. And then I had to get into this room where I had to fight off 2 or 3 waves of enemies. Most of them, I repeat, most of them were the Flood. So I was trying to hold on to my energy sword for the boss fight at the end. So I just ended up just meleeing them with my fist rather than my energy sword, so that I could conserve ammo, or at least energy sword ammo, which I don't think I used any energy sword during the mission. I don't think I did, but I could have. And then I just kind of threw a grenade or 2 and practically beat to death all of the Flood that was there. When heretic reinforcements arrived, I just went invisible, tried to sneak around them as best as I could. I don't think I was perfect. I got around them, and then I chased after the heretic. He ended up locking himself away, so I went upstairs to the roof where no one's allowed to go to, but because I'm such a rebel, I decided to go to the roof of this station, and I cut the cables that was holding an entire space station. I think that's how it goes, but I cut the cables, and I chased after the heretic, got to stuck around most of the enemies, and then I got to the boss fight, and then I just used my energy sword to just kill the heretic and his two holograms. And then that was the end of the Oracle. Playing as Master Chief again, we crashed down onto Delta Halo, the second Halo ring that we discovered in this game. And I decided to fight a few enemies before saying, forget it. I'm going to skip the Warthog, because after fighting off a few waves of enemies, you can the Pelican drops in and drops off a Warthog that you can take. They go to the next objective. Instead, I decided I'm just going to walk it and I did that, lowered a gate, and then I stole a ghost, drove it over to the other side of the bridge, and then killed the driver of the tank, the wraith that was on the other side of the bridge. Then I hopped back into the ghost because the tank, I was prone to accidentally killing someone more easy than I was the ghost. Plus, the ghost was much faster. So I took the ghost all the way until I couldn't anymore, and then I fought some honor guards, and that was probably the quickest I ever done this mission. I just used a rocket launcher that I started off with at the beginning of the mission, and they all went boom, goodbye. Now for regret. Regret here, my strategy going into this was so originally I went from Delta Halo straight into Regret, but then I quit the game and then I restarted Regret. Why? Because if you go directly from Delta Halo and go into Regret, then the weapons that you presently had, including the ammo count, will carry on over into Regret. So I didn't want that to happen. So in order to get a fully stocked weapon, or a couple of weapons, I quit the game and then joined Regret to get brand new weapons. Going through this, I didn't have much problem. Mostly just punched, maybe shot a little bit. But I didn't use anything that I didn't originally have when I first started the mission. I got to this big open area, and I thought I was going to have a bit of a problem here because 2 hunters were supposed to drop in via Phantom. However, none of them dropped in. Don't know why, but that actually helped out a lot for this playthrough. When a gondola finally got to my location, killed all the Covenant on board, and took it over to the other side of the river or whatever, to where the structure was, and then I wiped out all the enemies inside there after falling to my death once because I was an idiot. So after re-wiping out all the enemies, I took a nice boat ride or submarine ride or elevator ride through the ocean. I'm not sure what you want to call it. Took it over to this other structure, beat some of the enemies there senseless until they died, and then I took an gondola ride. And then I finally got to the location of Regret. For most of the mission though, I did just straight up skip a bunch of the enemies. Like there's a couple of hunters in this big open area, walked right past them or jumped right past them. Did that. But anyways, back to the end of the mission. I jumped in to the fight, expecting to have a lot of problems because there are honor guards there and I had no rocket launchers. But instead, I just ran right by everybody and went straight for Regret. Beat him to death with my melee attack because I can do that. And that was the end of the mission for me. Alright, back to the Arbiter now. We're doing the mission Sacred Icon. And in this mission, we start off taking a little ride on this, I don't know, what do you want to call it? You can call it a tugboat if you want, a floating tugboat. I essentially just totally skipped the aggressor sentinel at the beginning of the mission, just didn't even bother dealing with it. And I got myself on the other side of this big gap that I got on the other side of. And then there's another aggressor sentinel with other sentinels around and a bunch of flood. I did my best not to get into the conflict between the sentinels and the flood. After that, once a door finally opened, I went right through it, skipped most of the flood that was in the first level, and then on the next, I think like 2 or 3 levels, I had a little bit of problems. I had a few problems, died a few times, and but eventually I did push through it. I had to actually use some of my shots from my whatever rifle I have. I forgot what it's called. Concussion rifle, maybe? I don't remember. And I had to use a few of those shots so I could clear out some of the little guys. Little floods, not spores, but the little flood guys. And then also clear out some of the infected humans. And then finally, I got outside after bypassing another aggressor sentinel and a bunch of other flood. I also picked up some ammo for one of my weapons, so that was good. But once I got outside, I was in this big open area, actually two big open areas, and from there, I did use some of my ammo, but I let my teammates do most of the heavy lifting. And then that mission was a cinch practically. It was real easy. For Quarantine Zone, I did the same trick that I did with Delta Halo, where I quit the mission and then restarted it. Like I actually had to leave the mission and then load it up again through the main menu. That way I could get a refillment of my starting weapons. Sometimes I might get a new one. I don't remember if I got new ones or not, but I got a refilling of my ammo. And then I jumped into what is it called, a Sparrow or whatever it is, the Alien, the Covenant version of a Warthog, and jumped in that, and I practically just went by every single enemy. I didn't stop to shoot anyone or anything. I went by them all. Then I went through some debris. Tried to use my invisibility as I could through that. Like, I couldn't drive in these areas, so I used my invisibility to get around the majority of the enemies. I don't think I died anywhere along there. Once I got around them, then I finally got to I don't know, what do you want to call it, the elevator part or something. I got some teammates to aid me, but essentially there's this thing that you have to stay on, and it's moving straight and eventually starts going up, but while it's doing that, you got to kill off any of the flood that tried to attack you. Then I got to the end after the thing stopped. I didn't bother wasting too much ammo. I did use some, mostly grenades and the energy sword, but otherwise that mission was also very easy. Gravemind. This one here, I did not like where I started. I started off in this big open area, and the first thing I had to do was go beat some brutes up. I think I used a little bit of my ammo from my needler, but I did eventually get through it without dying, thankfully. It was really, really annoying, and I did not like doing this beginning part of the mission. So then I had to go rescue some Marines. Didn't really have too much trouble rescuing them. I mainly let them do the shooting, and I did the beating, mostly, though I did use some of my needler. And that's all I started with. That's all I could use this entire run was the needler, so that was really annoying. After rescuing the Marines, started running through segments again. I just left my Marines behind. Only killed when I had to. Then I got to this big open area, or I shouldn't say big open area. There's like a big bridge, and so it's like a narrow, large bridge. And I had the second most amount of trouble here, because once you get about 3/4 of the way through the bridge, like you're almost on the other side and you had to go through like this door. A couple of hunters comes out along with other reinforcements, and they try to like lay down the law on you. And I had a lot of trouble with this area. I just had to constantly dodge, weave in and out of hunters, making sure I don't die or anything. My needler did not seem to do much. I did use my needler some, and I was lucky to have needler ammo in the area, so I could just go around and pick up some needler ammo. But otherwise, it was a really, really, really annoying mission to do. So yeah, or annoying area to take care of. But eventually the doors did unlock, or maybe they're already unlocked, but I went through some unlocked doors before I killed the hunters, and I went to this big open room, and there's a bunch of brutes fighting a bunch of elites and hunters, or a couple of hunters. And I was like, oh no, I have to deal with this too. And then the two hunters that were from the bridge that I didn't end up end up killing them. They ran through the door, or that I came through, and then I had some more problems. I thought I helped the brutes take down the two hunters that were in the room first, and I couldn't kill them. The two hunters that were initially in the big room weren't there anymore. I have no idea what happened to them. So I was like, okay, now I gotta go and kill the other two hunters. But before I could go kill them, Cortana starts talking, saying it's time to, like she could sense some Marines or whatever, some responders or whatever, and that meant that I could move on to the next part of the mission. So I moved on to the last part, ran past all the enemies, except for I did beat up one guy a couple of times, and blew up another enemy, another elite, and then the mission was over. That was probably the hardest mission to deal with. Now for Uprising. This is the second to last Arbiter mission, and this is the third to last mission of the entire game. Well, anyways, starting off in here, my plan was to mainly use my cloaking ability to get around enemies easy, which I practically did that for most of the first part of the run, and then the last half of my playtime for this mission, I tried to get into a ghost and drive it across this like big canyon so that I just avoid all the enemies. However, the main trouble I had with this was not dying, but was accidentally killing or injuring an enemy during this time. I think I had to restart the last checkpoint at least 3 or 4 times, maybe more, because I kept on injuring or killing an enemy with my ghost by running into them. And then finally, after I got through all of that, then I had to get by a couple of wraiths. But again, I mainly just used my cloaking ability and just ran right past just about everyone. And then that got me to the end of the mission with using little ammo. Finally, the second to last mission, which is also the last Master Chief mission, this is High Charity. And what I did here is practically my strategy for the rest of the game was speed running tactics. Just run by enemies, don't even bother with them. That's what I practically did for the entire mission. I didn't have really any problems. I don't think I died at all, but I ran right through them. And then the second to last room where there's enemies, that's when I actually started using ammunition, and I had to use a lot of it because there's a lot of enemies. I had flood, brutes, grunts. I think I had grunts to deal with, but I had just a lot of it. No, jackals. Jackals to deal with, not grunts. Just a lot of enemies to deal with there. A lot of ways I could die. I might have died once in that area, might have. But after completing that, I went to this other room where it has a nice, beautiful energy sword for me to take, but I couldn't take it because I cannot swap out any of my weapons. If I do, then I can't use it. So I had to leave the energy sword there, and I went on into the next, or like the last part of the mission, and there I just knew I just had to run past everything. And so I ran past all the brutes and flood, and boom, end of High Charity. Finally, the last mission, the Great Journey, the last Arbiter mission, and the last Halo 2 mission. For this here, my strategy, again, was mostly just running past enemies and also going invisible. I did beat up a few enemies because they were kind of in my way, and if I didn't get rid of them, then they would be a problem for me. But after getting through this area, I got to a part where I'm kind of like in this little cell block, and I freed all of my allies, like hunters and elites, from their cells, so that they could do the dirty work for me. Ran past a few more enemies, killed them all with the help of some Marines, and then that was the end of. Or that I shouldn't say that was the end of the mission, no. But then I had a cutscene with Sergeant Johnson, teamed up with him. Then a couple of elites dropped off their banshees. Yeah, dropped off their banshees for me to take and fly around. Now here I thought I was going to have a big problem. I thought I was going to have to kill all the banshees that were flying around and all the enemies, because I remember doing this mission before. I was trying to do a speed run, and I flew right past like all the enemies and just tried to wait for the scarab to catch up, but the scarab never ended up moving. So I went back and then it started moving, and then it wouldn't get past these two tanks. So I remember that part of the mission. So what I decided to do was I dropped out of my banshee, and then I killed the enemies who were in the tanks, and then got back in the banshee. And then I was like, how am I supposed to deal with the banshees that are flying, or how am I supposed to deal with the banshees that are flying around? But then I realized that the that the that Sergeant Johnson in the Scarab was not even bothering with the banshees. So I was in the clear, walked right past them all, blew a hole open in the door that I needed to get through, and I flew right through it. And then I was I was near the end of the mission, and I entered this big room, and I had to fight off a bunch of brutes. Now, I don't think I used any ammo up to this point, so what I did here was like normal, went invisible, then I beat up all the brutes, and then I moved on to the last part, had a cutscene, and then all I had to do now was kill Tartarus. Now, I did get a little bit cocky, and I got too close to Tartarus, where he ended up taking his gravity hammer and smashing me with it. I thought that if I was invisible, then he couldn't see me. If I punched him, I mean, I knew I'd turn back to uninvisible. I would be visible again if I punched him, but I didn't think he would respond that quick, so I died. Had to redo that part, and I used my ammo sparingly. And eventually, after a few minutes of dealing with Tartarus, he ended up dying. And then I beat Halo 2 using only melee and starting weapons. Now, would I suggest playing Halo 2 using only starting weapons and melee? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't at all. This was really boring for me to do. I'm sure it was more enjoyable just watching me do it, but it was just a boring challenge to do, and I don't know, it wasn't any fun. So yeah. So anyways, if you'd leave a like and subscribe, that would be awesome. Right now, the government are being jerks right now, so I just need all the help I can get to, get some, just grow as a channel because the government and YouTube being jerks. So yeah, like, share, subscribe, and have a blessed day, guys. God bless, and bye, y'all.